Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 476, recorded live on Sunday, June 11th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have returning from DDO Players News, Draculetta.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Welcome back. We also have returning from the Lava Divers on Kyber, Asheras.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, welcome back. We apologize for the delay getting going. We had some things happen in life that we were just a little bit late. So we're on the road now, though, so we'll get through this. It'll be a lot of fun. This week's screenshot, a nice take on an oldie, I think. Feta takes a leap of faith in the 319th screenshot of the week off of the harbor statue, the ever-prominent harbor statue, which I'm sure they get probably 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 of those pictures a month for the screenshot of the week.
Well, it makes just such a great screenshot, though, if you can get the camera just right, like which they did, because this is an awesome screenshot, too. So I can see why people submit a lot of screenshots like this.
Well, it's a nice new take, a different take, too, right? A lot of people just kind of go up there, and I don't actually know that I've ever bothered to go up there, to be honest. I don't know if I know the route. In any case, we like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will hopefully be next weekend if I can figure out how to fit it into my schedule. And you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com, where we also have a calendar. So that way you can keep up with when our shows are going to be, when DDO Splat's going to be, and what the sales and bonus days are as well. On the podcast this week, we've got some fun information on Artificers and some upcoming changes to the Battle Engineer tree. Also kind of circle back a little bit on, well, we're going to do a lot of circling back on the Cleric changes because we're going to do a debate this week. And kind of at least the main focus is going to be on the proposed Cleric changes. So we'll probably spend a little bit more time on those questions, and kind of the other questions will be a little shorter than that. Just to kind of reiterate for our debates, so what the idea is here is to kind of have a fun discussion and really kind of dive into some of this stuff a little bit. We'll have some, we'll kind of all go around and give opening arguments and thoughts in the matter, and then kind of go back and forth a little bit. We want our arguments to be fun, creative, passionate, but not mean. And feel free, if you're listening in our chat room, to chime in or on the comments, wherever you might find the show as well. So let's jump right into our first question, which is what changes should be made to the proposed turn undead changes? And Asheras, would you like to start us off here?
Okay, yeah, sure. So we're talking about changes to the turn undead mechanic. I like that they're looking at this.
What they proposed specifically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I like what they proposed to some degree. I like that they're looking at it first and foremost. I think it's something that needed some addressing. I like the idea of putting in a damage component to it rather than it just being a binary of, either you turn them or destroy them depending on what your hit dice is. Or nothing happens. So the idea of giving it something that's not binary was a great idea. I didn't like that they completely took off the table the concept of destroying the undead or anything like that. I would have liked to have seen something where that mechanic stayed in, and then if you failed that, then there was a damage component that kicked in at that point. And maybe a short duration stun or something like that as well. So that would have been my proposal, is that they add the damage into the existing functionality rather than doing a replace of that functionality.
Okay. Drac, I know you don't play a lot of clerics, but did you want to chime in here on turn undead?
Yeah, from what I can gather, as you said, I don't play a cleric. I'm actually going to roll one up, though, if some of these changes come in, but we'll talk about that later. For the turn undead, though, I think what they should do is, from going through all the forum threads on this, from what I gathered, most people are talking about how this is going to affect people in the epic levels, because it seems to be working fairly well in the heroic levels from what I can, gather reading on the forums. So instead of proposing what they're going to do, why don't they just add for the epic levels, add a destiny for turn undead, and maybe do some changes like they're proposing just in the epic levels only, and leave heroic like it is.
It's an interesting thought. I'm curious because you probably spend. Ash and I have similar playing experiences. I'm wondering if you have much of an experience of people using turn undead very much in lower levels, or have seen that to be very useful.
A little bit. One of my friends actually has a cleric, and he does do turn undead, and he kind of built it to be undead turner, and it works fairly well. He doesn't use it often, but that's because there's not a lot of undead really in the lower levels until you get maybe to House Jarasco, and then you start seeing a lot of undead. But from what I've seen with him, it works fairly well in the lower levels.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I've had experience with it on my cleric, and I remember, for example, Madstone Crater was a quest that if you build for turning, you can very easily destroy all the undead in that area, and that's always been a fun quest to do it. And even when you get into Necro 4, you're able to do it as well. My feeling was that it was some point after Necro 4 where it started to become more challenging to keep it current.
Yeah, I definitely never really got into it, partly because when I was playing with it, you couldn't get a lot of the stuff you could now. There wasn't any really enhancements that was going to boost turn undead other than give you more or let you do different things with it. So I'm kind of I'm very old school in my thinking of turn undead, in that it's never really worked for me, and I never could get the numbers to work out very well. I know there's enhancements like Mighty Turning that help with some of that. I just never took that because by the time that stuff came out, I'd already written it off. I think my thoughts are the changes that they proposed is a much better system than currently exists. And I'll talk about some of the stuff we got comments later. But I look at what Turn Undead is currently, and I understand that it's going to change things for some people, and taking the destroy stuff away from a lot of people, or for some people. But my sense is that probably conservatively 75% of clerics don't use it, or don't get anything out of using it, at least for turns. So I think taking that away is less catastrophic than than some people are making it out to be. We also had some comments that essentially said that it works fine from levels 1 to 15. And my response to that is, okay, so it doesn't work for level 16 to 30. That's not a well-designed system, and that should change. Like if say, I don't know, a fighter could only use swords from level 1 to 15, and from level 16 to 20 or 30, swords weren't useful or didn't effectively work, people would not like that, right? Like that's a fairly critical. Now, again, Turn Undead is not necessarily a prime ability of clerics. It's a very lore-specific one and comes from pen and paper, but it's not like an integral thing in terms of using a sword is for fighters. But all that to say, if I hear people say that it works fine in heroics, okay, great. But that means the system needs to work in epics too, right? Like it should work in epics from a design standpoint. I think that the changes they proposed are better than where we are. Some of the things I really like about it, like you said, Ash, is the damage addition of that. That makes it less binary, which I think is much better. One of the things I really liked about these changes was changing the DC functionality, or at least making it an actual DC as opposed to hit dice, which, to my understanding of how things work, is it should actually make it more useful in the sense that you don't have to worry about undead that have more hit dice than you can actually effectively destroy or turn. And instead of, like, the way it currently works, to my understanding, is if you're surrounded by 20 undead and you hit turn undead, you're only going to turn a certain number of hit dice. So you'll probably, let's just conservatively say that you're only going to be able to affect 10 of those 20 mobs. And you're still going to have 20 hitting you, or 10 hitting you out of those 20. If you change it to a DC and take away the hit die limitations, you can hit all of them, which I think is better. I also think the DC mechanic is a lot easier to understand, considering that everything else in the game uses DC mechanics, and Turn Undead doesn't. So
I agree with you 100%. If they change nothing else, going to a DC mechanic based off of your charisma or your wisdom or whatever, and get rid of this hit dice mechanic, which I know is traditional D&D, is very lore based. But the problem is that DDO has really never been a hit dice based game in a lot of ways. That component just doesn't exist except for here. So it's confusing. The enhancements are confusing. The gear is confusing. The whole system is confusing in terms of how many hit dice can you affect and what's the highest hit dice of an individual mob that you can affect as well. There's these two different calculations going on, and they have various caps built into them. It's very confusing and challenging, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about the system. So if nothing else, just clarifying that would have been a great solve, even if they didn't add the damage component, which I still think they should do.
yeah, and hit dice scale a lot differently than they do in pen and paper, and Turn Undead has always been based on the pen and paper version fairly heavily. So there's a lot of stuff in the game that helps you overcome that hit die challenge and scaling, but I mean, it doesn't keep pace with what you can get with hit die scaling at all. So,
which, to be fair, it is really confusing in pen and paper too.
Yes, it is.
So this is just not a DDO thing. How it's confusing. It's confusing in pen and paper as well. So, but
no. Well, I think another point to make is a lot of people are focusing on the destroy capability, and
right.
That's not necessarily, and that's pretty overpowered. If you can destroy all 20 mobs within a 5 or 10 foot radius of you, I think that there needs to be some understanding of, it's not called destroy undead, it is called turn undead, and we do want to just be able to turn the mobs or cause them damage, even if we can't destroy them, and not necessarily focus on always being able to destroy everything in sight. There's got to be a balance there with this thing, because it could become a very powerful ability if that's not controlled.
Well, it could be, but I mean, you understand too, there's limitations in the number of times you can use this. And sure, they regenerate, you can get them to regenerate and stuff like that, but
sure.
I mean, there are some limitations to it. Now, having said that, you can tweak a lot of things with the DC if the destroy thing is still there. And I still think it's a valid point to say that if you still want to just outright destroy undead, you can take a specific domain, which we don't have, so you're not, I mean, and from a standpoint of what you have now, you're not giving anything up to still be able to destroy undead. Now, I get that there are other choices you could make, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Well, probably more than a minute.
Sure. Yeah.
But, I mean, you can still get that mechanic. So, I think I think that has to be considered when you're talking about Turn Undead changes. Now, having said that, I mean, if they did something like, so when we're talking about what changes should be made, I think you can make a pretty good argument that, okay, maybe we should reduce the DC. So instead of it being based on a Cleric plus Paladin level, you could make it half of that. So that you can, and then you can put the destroy mechanic back in, maybe lessen the damage or something like that. So you can still, if people are really married to this idea that it has to have, the base version of Turn Undead has to be able to destroy undead, which I don't think you have to have that, but I understand that that's essentially what people have considered that ability to be for 10 years. If you can turn undead, people consider that being really functionally, that means you can destroy a bunch of undead when you cast the turn undead. So I think you could tweak the DCs, lower those down, and allow you to destroy undead still, and then in the death domain you can say, okay, well, your turn is now based off of your full Cleric or Paladin level combined, as opposed to half of that, for example. So you can still keep the destroy mechanic and just make the DCs harder to achieve if you're not in that death domain.
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is, because we're talking briefly about the domains, the death domain has that ability to destroy undead, but then also all the other domains have some other value add for the turn undead that adds to its utility in some way, whether it's boosting a specific stat like charisma or wisdom or adding some HP or whatever. And so you're not just looking at it as, well, it just does damage and I can't destroy undead. Now you're also looking at it and saying, depending on what domain I'm choosing, I'm also getting something that has synergy with whatever my core competency is that I want as a cleric. So there's a lot of other aspects to it too, beyond just the does it do damage or does it destroy things.
Right, but where we are right now, they've said that they come out and said that because of the feedback they've gotten, they're probably not going to focus energy on this right now. So it's not this is not coming anytime soon, for sure, and it's going to change. We know it's going to change. But I mean, so let's try and focus a little bit on what we should change too. But I think that when you look at what a lot of people are upset about, the most common thing that I've seen is we can't just outright destroy undead. Which is only, again, I think that's only half true because you can take a domain that you don't have to choose right now and you can still destroy undead. But I think a way, kind of make a middle ground, right? If you just took what we have and said, okay, instead of the DC being 10 plus charisma modifier plus your full cleric and paladin level, you could reduce that. Even you could just say instead of cleric and paladin level, let's do it like half of that. Or you could base what might be more interesting would be to base it on half of your caster level between those two, because then if you take the divine epic destinies, a lot of those, I think most of them actually, if not all of them, they increase your caster level for clerics and paladins and favored souls, right? So you would get some benefit out of those, which helps you scale into epics. But I think that would give us a nice balance between what we have and not getting the destroy undead, which is kind of what's scuttling the whole thing in the first place. So I think there's also a question of one of the things it's going to do is the proposal was to stun undead. And the thing that kind of jumped out to me was when they say stun, do they mean like they become helpless so we do extra damage to them? Or do they just stop moving?
That was my question too. I didn't understand exactly what they meant by stun there.
Because there are basically two things that I saw most commonly. I didn't look at a lot of places, but that I saw that were critiquing this. One was the stun is too short, and two is that you can't just destroy undead. And I think if the stun is making them helpless, I think 10 seconds is fine. I think
you can do a lot of damage to something in 10 seconds if you're
helpless,
and, if you get right and you use the right skills or whatever. I mean, 10 seconds is a heck of a lot of time.
Yeah. I think right now you can, as Lessa calls, you can put them in the tapeworm position. And I think that lasts longer than 10 seconds. I don't generally see things survive longer than that when they become in that position. So it's hard for me to say. But I think if you make it so that stun, maybe it's that shorter 10-second duration. But if they're helpless and you're doing double, or I don't think it's double damage, but if you're doing extra damage, I think that's a pretty good trade-off for a shorter stun. So.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, we have to consider too that Turn Undead is a feature that only one class gets, and
two classes.
It's
okay,
or two classes. Okay, two classes get that does not use mana. And if you were to just pick any other class, say I don't know, a wizard or a sorcerer, and say, hey, we're going to give you an ability that you can use, at cap around 30 to 40 times per rest, that destroys a bunch of one type of mob, which is very common in the game. That's going to be considered to be a pretty powerful feature. So you have to kind of balance this, considering you can spend some AP to enhance it, but at the end of the day, you don't necessarily have to spend AP to get it. There's not a lot of trade-offs to having it. So abilities that don't have trade-offs from a build perspective need to be gated to some degree as well.
Yeah. In any case, I hope they move forward with the changes. I would rather have their proposed changes as they are than to just keep the same system. Personally, I think it's a better system. I think the DC mechanic is much more in line with everything else. It's less of a barrier for new players to try and figure out how it works and stuff like that. So,
I agree. I hope they don't just keep it as is, because some changes need to be done. It's if you're going to have it, it needs to be viable in some way, shape, or form from level 1 to level 30. And just doing nothing doesn't really make sense to me. There's a lot of good possibilities on the table. They should be able to find a path to something.
Before we totally get off Turn Undead, Drac, I know you have a really heavy pen and paper background. Do you have you had the experience that Turn Undead is an effective tool for your players, or is it just kind of cumbersome and it never seems to do a whole lot?
It's kind of a little bit of both. In pen and paper, in my experience, it really depends on how the person built their cleric. If they built their cleric to use Turn Undead effectively, I have seen that actually pull some of my parties out of the fire to where they were going to get overrun. I was probably going to get a TPK, and that's kind of where my if you listen to DDO Players News, you kind of know there's a running joke that I hate the cleric in my pen and paper party because he tends to save my party a lot from TPKs, and he's done that more than once with his Turn Undead.
Kind of his job, right?
Yeah, well, it is, and he does his job well, and that's why I hate clerics. But yeah, so it's a little of both, actually.
I was actually just thinking, I've always had the experience in pen and paper that Turn Undead doesn't. One, it really bogs the game down because like, okay, I'm going to turn. Like, okay, how do we do this again?
Yeah, exactly.
Books,
That's
right?
I got to look it up every time.
It's really convoluted.
Yeah,
It's even in pen and paper, it's a fairly unique system. It doesn't use DCs there either, and then you have to do a lot of math and figure out which hit dice. I don't like it in pen and paper either. But I've never really. I mean, I've seen it be used occasionally, and it does okay. My sense is that you don't tend to fight a lot of undead, or at least let me rephrase that. You don't tend to like go into a dungeon in pen and paper and it's just wall to wall undead.
Right. True.
Dungeons in pen and paper are typically more varied in their monster selection than they are in DDO. One of the things I was thinking about too while you were talking about this, because they're proposing, if you kind of went down my road of changing the caster level, right? I think changing the caster level and having it or reducing the DCs. And they kind of said this already, but like some of the items that you have, the turning items, it'd be kind of fun if some of those kind of turned into more of a increase your caster level for clerics and paladins, and have that affect other like your actual spells as well. Would be kind of fun in terms of damage and output like that. It'd be kind of an interesting change as well. Anything else you guys want to say about Turn Undead? Anything else we want to propose out there?
The curiosity in me is killing me. I would love to be on the Players Council because I would love to know what their thoughts are on this. After seeing what happened just on the regular forums, I would love to know if the Players Council is kind of having the same reaction to this.
I wouldn't be surprised if you had a similar division, but it's hard to say. And I think that the biggest criticism I've seen is most of the people are just saying I can't turn undead and I can't turn undead anymore, which what they mean is I can't destroy undead anymore with this new mechanic.
Well, I'm on the Players Council, and I obviously can't reveal anything that we talk about there, but I can say that there has been conversation on this topic, and it has been spirited,
Lively.
and there's been lively, and not everyone's in agreement. So yeah, but there's definitely some passionate views being discussed.
It's a major change to a system, that's for sure, to an ability. I mean, this is a pretty hard left turn, but I like the direction. I would say I like the direction that they're going in. I understand that people don't like that they're taking out the destroy aspect of it. That's not a deal breaker for me, but I understand why some people really want that in there. So that's why I say I think a middle ground would be appropriate. Just reduce the DC and let them destroy stuff and let the death domain get better DCs, like significantly better DCs. I think it'd be great.
Well, if you do that with the death domain, then that gives you a sort of trade-off thing, because by choosing that domain, you're not choosing something else, and you're choosing to specialize in making this turn ability, more powerful, and those trade-offs are good for the game.
Yeah, and I think let's move on to our next question, which is, as proposed, what is the best new cleric domain? There's a lot to choose from here, and I think as we kind of get into this, there's some things I really like about adding domains, and one of them is just it's interesting choices. I personally have a sense that for a cleric, there's not a lot of build choices that you can make. You can go melee or caster, and even then, you're probably going to make a lot of the same build choices. So I think the domains give clerics an amazing amount of variety, and I really hope these domain changes come out. I have a feeling that they're probably going to be tied heavily into the turn undead changes, so if they're going to hold off on turn undead, we may not see domains for a long time, which is another reason why I'm like, no, I'll take... I get that turn undead's not perfect, but let's change some things and make it better and get the domains in here. But yeah, choices are great, right? Like, we like build choices. In any case, so let's talk about what's the best new cleric domain, and let's start with Draculetta this time.
And I'm going to start off by saying that I'm excited to see domains coming, because it's like an integral part of pen and paper. So it's exciting to see this coming. And I think, as you said, it's going to open up a lot of build choices. And looking over these proposed domains as they are now, I can see a lot of opportunity that where you can multi-class with a cleric now more easily, because you're going to gain some stuff on your domain. But the question that you stated, I'm going to have to say, the best one, as it's proposed, would have to be the animal domain. And that is because at level 5, you will gain 20 hit points per your cleric level.
Which is 20 hit points. It was 100 hit points right off the bat, right?
Yes, and let's just let's that sink in. That's 100 off the bat. And then as you go up in levels, you're going to get more levels. So you're looking at least 800 hit points, which is insane. Plus the fact that you will also gain your party will gain points of constitution equal to half of your cleric level for 20 seconds when you use your turn undead. So that's like a little quick hit of bonus constitution for your party as well. So that is just insane. So I'm going to say the animal domain, as it's proposed right now, is the best one to choose. And then if you want to you want to totally destroy the undead, then you can choose the death domain, because that's basically what that's designed to do. But animal domain is just crazy awesome as it's proposed.
Sure. Ash, what do you think?
Well, I want to start off by saying I'm really glad that they're doing domains as well. Clerics have been a underserved class for a long time and long overdue. I'm excited about the idea of domains. I think that several of these domains are massively overpowered, and for right now, that's fun to talk about. I'm hoping that they do get toned back a little bit, but while we're discussing them, the animal domain is a great domain. You can be a sack of HP. I like that. We don't like that in our bosses, but we want it to be that ourselves. Maybe you won't get one-shotted quite as often in Legendary Elite, but I'm going to go with the war domain, in part because my first build ever was a cleric that I got to cap back when the level cap was 14 or 16. And I always wanted to be able to play a melee cleric of some sort. A battle cleric is what they were called with derision back then. And the war domain would finally allow me to play a cleric that could do that with its head held high. With this, you're going to get +1 damage with melee and ranged weapons that increases 5 times for a grand total of +6 to hit or to damage when you're at level 20. You learn your turn on deads are going to give your entire party a divine bonus, stacks with everything, to melee power equal to half your cleric levels for 20 seconds, and so there's going to be another plus 10 melee power. You gain proficiency in all martial and exotic weapons at level 5, and of course most of the best crit range weapons are the exotic weapons, so that's great. At level 9, here's really fun stuff. Your one-handed weapons get a base die of 1d10. And it's a little unclear about this, but it sounds like this is everything. So, your daggers are now 1d10. Kukris are 1d10. Shuriken would be 1d10. You can just see where this would go with some thrower builds, possibly. Take a scimitar with the scimitar's crit profile, take it from 1d6 up to 1d10. And every time you get a W, and you're going to end up with typically 7, 8, 9, 10 W at endgame, that 1d10 is multiplying on all of that. Two-handers can get to 2d8, okay? But think like 1d10 with picks, for example, which are usually a d6 dice with their times 4 multiplier base. You can do some really fun stuff with this, get a lot of damage out of it. And then the kicker is at level 14, you get Holy Sword. Yay. So you get all your crit profile bonuses that Kensai get, or Paladins get, or Rangers get. Well, you get them too now. So it's great. Oh, and plus, if you really want to use tactics, your tactical DCs are increased by half your cleric level, which is going to be plus 10 to all tactics at cap. I'm not sure that's really so helpful because I don't know that there's a lot of other ways to boost your tactics as a cleric, unless you're going to start to go multi-class. But and in fact, with the War Domain, I'd probably be looking at a 14/6 sort of splash, get that Holy Sword, and then give me some fire levels there. But it would be a really powerful melee that can completely self-heal, quickened heals, all kinds of fun stuff.
I'm kind of wondering if the new Shuriken build, if this just went live, if the new version of the Shuriken build would be 14 cleric, 6 ranger.
Yeah, I think so. I think you need some monk in there for the advanced ninja training or whatever it is.
Yeah, maybe. But level, or even just getting to level 9 with a cleric, right? Gives you, a Shuriken's doing 1d10 base damage. That's how this reads, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty impressive. Because, that's 1d... You're going from 1d2 to 1d10 damage, base damage. That's kind of crazy. Let's think about that. So if you did... what would be the best splash there? Maybe 4 monk, 10 cleric, 6 ranger, or something like that? You could get an interesting Shuriken build there.
I think you could.
As I said, yeah, I think this is going to open up multi-class builds for clerics so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it needs to be nerfed, the War Domain, by the way. It's super clear.
Okay, let's just be honest. There's a lot of these that need to be nerfed. Let's just be honest here.
Since it's not live, it's probably not technically a nerf, but these need to be toned down. They could have... Level 9 could have either a few more tiers in there based on what your current base dice is, and maybe it goes up by 1 or 2 die steps versus just moving everything to d10.
That would seem to make more sense, yeah. Well, and then that would also, if the base damage die was already 1d10, then you would still get benefit from that boost. So making that just an increase would probably be better.
Is Bastard Sword the only one-hander that starts off at d10?
Probably.
Yeah, I think it
Kopech
is.
is D8, right?
Yeah.
But has a better crit profile. Yeah. So I'm going to give a couple shout-outs because I think there's some fun stuff in here, like Law and Trickery increase your enchantment DCs. So I think you could see an interesting Ranger Cleric DC build for the enchantment DCs. That could be kind of interesting, right?
Oh, with your imbues?
Yeah. The paralyzing arrows.
Well, yeah, don't forget the turn undead there also would give you a plus 10 to your wisdom as well, which would be a plus 5 to your DCs.
Yeah.
So that's plus 9. That's plus 9 overall for the enchantment.
Trickery's charisma. What was the other one? No, I can't find it because I'm looking at the list. Let's see. I think there's some interesting ones here. I'm having trouble deciding between luck and knowledge. And the thing that I like out of luck is, displacement as an SLA, that's pretty sweet. Every 5 minutes, if you're killed, you survive. That's pretty sweet. Because, I mean, that's a lot of... Can you imagine how many raids we could have completed? Or how many more raids we could have completed if the cleric just popped right back up every 5 minutes? That'd be very helpful. The thing that I kind of liked out of the luck domain, though, is you add 1d8 to the DCs of your spells. That's all of them, right? And nothing else. Plus 8 to your DCs is higher than anything else in here by far.
You can get +7 out of 1 or 2, but yeah, it's tough to get more than +7.
Can you get +7? Because I thought it was like 2, 6, 12, 18, so you're getting +4.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you can get
and a 1d8 is a standard as the average for 1d8 is 4.5. So your average will be better out of luck.
It will, yes. And you combine that with what you get in Divine Disciple, which could be +2 to Evocation or +2 to Necromancy. So you're averaging +6 to +7 for those 2 key DCs, and everything else you're at +4 to 5, which on average.
But
that's pretty strong.
It is pretty strong. It's a little random though, but I think the stronger one is Knowledge by a hair. I think the luck has some better, like its SLA stuff is a little bit better. Like you get displacement, and if you're killed, you come back to life, and you get some nice saving throw bonuses. But Knowledge, I like that you get. I mean, it's really all about the level 14 ability for Knowledge. Is you get half your cleric level as spell penetration. That's +10 to spell penetration. That's a lot of spell penetration. Plus, you're getting +3 to the DCs of all your spells, which if you average it out is only 1.5 lower. So, yeah, +3 to DCs compared to the other ones where they increase a specific DC by +4 total. This one gives you +3. So, I think that spell penetration is lower. The thing that brings Knowledge down is that's kind of the only thing out of there that I think is that good.
Yeah, it's very top heavy. That level 14 is it, but +10 to spell penetration, and then you get +3 in Divine Disciple for +13 total. When no other class gives you more than +3 out of your class enhancements, that's a huge gap.
Yeah, it's a major gap there. But there's not to say look, there's a lot of really great choices you can make in here too. So,
I mean, Magic Domain at level 5, you're going to get chain missiles as a SLA. I mean, really?
So here's an interesting question, because I was thinking about this. One of the things that I think makes a lot of this seem pretty overpowered is a lot of this stuff is spell-like abilities. If you look at pen and paper, you just add it to your spell book, right, as a domain spell. And technically you can only cast 1 domain spell a day, right, at each level. So you can't just recast them. Do you think that for the spells that are outside of a cleric spellbook, they should still be SLAs, or do you think maybe they should change them to just be added to your spellbook?
I think a lot of this depends on where they're going with the other classes. This gets into a class balance issue for me, because right now in Divine Disciple, you've already got, I think, 4 different SLAs available in there. I think you get Nimbus of Light, you get Flame Strike, you get Holy Smite, and Searing Light. That you can take. So, if you're looking at that, and let's say you're wanting to do like the nuker sort of build, and this is where the fire or the sun domain is going to come into play, because you've got 4 solid light-based SLAs, and then you're going to add Scorching Ray, Wall of Fire, and Firestorm to that, for example. Now you've got a rotation of 7 SLAs that all get meta magics for free, and right now, Favored Souls have 1. I can't recall how many Druids have, but it's not many. None of the other classes really have that number of SLAs. So you've got to kind of look at what you're doing there versus what you're looking to do with the other classes, and kind of being able to put them all on par to be able to have the same level of power to some degree.
Yeah, I just looked through this list, and I think a lot of these just shouldn't be SLAs. Like, Earthquake as an SLA, I'm not sure that's... I don't know if that should be an SLA, right? I think you just give them the spell.
Yeah. Well, and you're giving them the SLA 2 levels before the Druid can even get it as a spell in their spellbook. I think they need to do a little balancing on this. And I agree with you. I think putting the spells in the spellbook would be a better choice there, in a lot of ways.
No, I can see like the ones that clerics get normally becoming SLA, sure, but Yeah, I don't know. I think some of that they probably can't just. They probably only have the choice of it's in your spellbook or it's an SLA. But like if you could make it so that some of the metamatics maybe were cheaper or something like that, that might work. But in any case, but there's a lot of good choices here. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can go with. Sun is pretty nice if you want to do DPS, and I think Earth is pretty nice if you want Earthquake. That's pretty hard to turn down. And healing is, more healing stuff going on. So, yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to say about domains before we move on? I think Doug in the chat is saying he'd do Sun Domain, Sun Elf. Yeah, if you did Sun Domain, and you had the Sun Elf, and you also did, if you were in the Enlightened Angel Tree, and you had the SLA Sunbolt, I mean, yeehaw. That'll be fun. And my Cleric right now on with I think Searing Light's the level 2 spell, right? I think
Yes, that's correct.
I think he already has it as an SLA from one of the trees. But I mean that's doing 1,000 damage for me. So before getting 40 spell power to that, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's go to our next question, and this comes from Althodas on Arganessen. Is nerfing any class ever worth the hassle? And that's a loaded question.
Very much so.
I'll kick this one off. The first thing that I think of when I see this question is, I think nerfing gets thrown around a little too much. Because sometimes things change, and there's a balancing reason, and there's a trade-off. And people, like you take Turn Undead for example, I think people are focusing too much on it's not the proposal takes away destroying Turn Undead, therefore it's a nerf. And I don't know that that's a fair assessment and fair use of that term because it's changing so much that part of it goes away and some of this you get more stuff back in. So I'm not trying to debate whether or not the Turn Undead changes are nerf or not. I'm mostly just trying to point out that I think people throw the term nerf around a little too much. And I don't think it's always accurate. To the main question, is it ever worth it? Yes, I think has to be the answer. Because I think if you weren't willing to nerf things and make balancing changes, then you risk getting into this point where everyone's playing the same class because it's just too powerful. I think Dungeons & Dragons, in pretty much any form, thrives better when there's a balance between classes and people play different classes together. So, yes, I think you have to nerf classes in order to maintain some semblance of balance. You shouldn't be able to, with one class, be able to be better than every other class at everything that those classes are supposed to specialize in. So, let's see. Ash, you want to take this one next?
Yeah. So I think I agree with you that nerfing is something that is necessary at times. I don't think that it's something that should be gone into lightly. I think they should really pick and choose their moments for it because there is a lot of hassle or pain associated with it with the player base, and understandably so. But there are situations, especially when they're introducing new mechanics that haven't been a part of the game before, that sometimes they need to adjust those. And I would generally prefer to see that when something is a small difference that needs to be corrected, that they look at ways to bring the other classes up to that level rather than bringing the one class down if possible. Making changes to improve things for balance is the better way to go, but sometimes that's just not possible. And I'm going to use a common example these days, which is the Warlock class, because the Warlock class introduced some new mechanics that had never existed in the game before, specifically the burst, the Eldritch Burst, Eldritch Blast sort of thing, which is a no mana usage ranged attack. And I think that they've had to change that a couple of times because it was something new to the game that they'd never done before, and they really didn't understand exactly how players, with all their creativity, were going to build around that feature and take advantage of it. And sometimes, the player base is a victim of their own creativity in that regard, and they discover things combinations that weren't foreseen, and then they have to be addressed. But by and large, I think that nerfing is a lot of hassle, and they should really only use it when they absolutely need to.
Drac?
I agree. It's just like you said, Patrick. There is a balance change that is done, and then there's a nerf. And I think there's a fine line between, is it a balance change or is it a nerf? And I'm pretty sure that the devs don't come into the office on a Monday morning and it's like, how can we piss off the player base the most today? We're going to nerf this skill. They don't go into it with that mindset. I think they try to balance the game, and maybe sometimes they might go a little too far, and then that's when people start screaming nerf. But is it really a nerf? Is it not? They need to do it to keep the game balanced and fun, because let's just be honest, it wouldn't be any fun if everybody would just have a button of winning. I mean, then what would be the point of even playing the game anymore? So I think it's worth it. They just have to watch the line that are they doing balance change? Are they actually going too far? And then I think if they go too far, then I think we can scream nerf and actually mean it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that go behind this too. Like, I don't think it's a nerf because when they released Warlocks, and then what was it, a month or two later, they toned down some of the spell power scaling to some of the different abilities. I don't think that's a nerf, because
that is a balance change.
Yeah, I don't think it's been in the game long enough. There has to be a grace period, right? Like, they put something in the game, let's see how it plays out, and then we can tweak it. And they've said that they've made it pretty clear that a lot of times they choose numbers based on the idea that they would rather turn them up than turn them down, because people tend to scream nerf when you turn them down, even though it's only been out for a month and they're still trying to gather data. Now, I would say that if they put those abilities on, say, Lemania for 2 months, and Lemania was heavily populated for those 2 months, and people were really going at it and really banging on that stuff with all the hammers they could find, I think you can make more of an argument that a short term is a nerf. But the other one that kind of really jumps out to me, and I think this was before you, Draculetta, but I know Ash will remember this. There was a time in the game where two-weapon fighting worked a little differently, mostly on the back end. And what happened was they did collisions for both your main hand and collision checks for your main hand and your offhand attacks. And what they found was when you got a lot of people together, like in a raid, and just sitting around beating a boss, the lag would really pile up because of the number of collision checks. So what they did was they went to what they have now, which is where your offhand procs on a % chance of your main hand attacks. And a lot of people really screamed nerf for that. And I don't remember running the numbers, but I think people were pretty convinced, and I think they had data to back it up, that you were going to have less DPS under the new changes, all things being equal. But at the same time, I think you'd be really hard-pressed, especially right now, to say that the game didn't benefit heavily from that. So
I agree. Yeah, I remember that change, and you're right. And it was, people did figure out the attack ratios, and it was a little lower. I think at the time, two-weapon fighting also was generally considered to be way ahead of two-handed fighting.
That's true too.
And so, but I don't think the main goal was to bring balance between the fighting styles quite as much as it was, like you said, to address the lag. And that's something that that's had to be done. And it had to be done a couple of times. I think they've tweaked the two-weapon fighting animations and such for lag purposes. And if I had to choose between being able to attack slightly faster with a lot of lag, or slightly slower with no lag, I know which one I'll choose. I'll take no lag every time.
Well, we had to use tricks, right? Because the place that really showed up at the time, Tower of Despair, was the end of the kind of the end game raid. And in part 2, we'd tell people, and I know Ash remembers this, that I'd tell people attack for 5 seconds and then take a second or two off, right? Like, so the idea would be that we wouldn't pile up all the collision checks. People would kind of take a break. And it was remarkable how well that simple strategy worked. And it was pretty telling that there was an issue there. So, all right, let's get. So there's kind of our main, like around the cleric changes stuff. We're gonna do some more questions here. We're not done with the debate, but this is gonna be a little more off topic and a little more fun. And our next question is, which raid boss wins in a free-for-all deathmatch? So if we take all of the raid bosses and throw them in an arena, who's going to come out on top? Ash, why don't you start us off here?
Well, as much as it's not one of my favorite raids, I'm probably going to go with Lolth. I think she's, the highest order goddess of the group, and even when we fight her, we don't actually ever beat her. We just kind of, stun her a little bit, and we have to let Anna finish her off. Or I don't think Anna finishes her off, but just kind of knocks her back a little bit. So I don't see any of these guys taking her on. Maybe, I guess technically the Lord of Blades is also a god, so he might be able to come in second place. But I'm going with Lolth on this one, and her impressive belly button.
Drac, what's your choice?
I am going to go with the Black Abbot simply because he is a lich, and we all know we should fear liches.
I'm going
They're hard. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you finish your thought.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a lich. Liches are hard to kill because they're already dead. So you got to go with the lich every time.
Yeah, but see, we kill liches all the time, so I'm going with Lord of Blades.
But do you really kill a lich? Do you really kill a lich?
But isn't
Yeah,
Argo
sure.
also a lich? And that's a lich dragon.
Hang on, I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
Because we have
See,
to get her
there's a-
phylactery.
Well, but we kill her phylactery and then we kill her, right?
Yeah, and she's a lich.
Yeah.
I think a lich dragon is scarier than a lich, abbot.
True. I forgot about the lich dragon.
Doug's saying the truthful one, although the truthful one is not a lich. We were talking about this earlier. The truthful one is a spectral dragon, not a lich dragon. There's a difference, and I'm not really sure what it is lore-wise, but anyways, I'm picking Lord of Blades. First of all, he's got some of the better attacks. Well, again, I think just from you go straight out of the gate, any one of these raid bosses that we as players can actually kill, I think is out the window because there's some we can't kill, right? So that pretty much leaves us down to Loth, Lord of Blades, and Lady Vol. And I think that here's the problem with Loth. Loth is going to get bored, right? As long as you leave her alone, she's not really going to do anything, and she's just going to go off and do whatever. I mean, here's the thing with Caught in the Web, right? We're stealing the thing that she wants, like her end game goal for this century, right? And we're taking her out, and she's content to just watch and be amused, which leads to her downfall, right? Like, I'm just not buying Loth here.
So your argument is that she is so powerful that she wouldn't win.
No, my argument is she's stupid
Okay.
and aloof.
All right.
She's Loth, though. She plays with you. She toys with you. That's what she does. She makes you think she's stupid.
And because of that, she loses. She could... Okay, sure. If you're running Caught in the Web, she could come down and pretty much just swat us all off the map and into oblivion. And she doesn't.
Well, the other question would be, what's our setting here? Because Caught in the Web takes place in her home plane, correct?
Neutral playground.
Yes. Yeah, okay, so if we're going neutral playground where she's just got, her avatar aspect, then it might be a little bit more of a fair fight. I don't know. Because the Lord of Blades, we fight him on the prime material plane here. But this is his home plane, isn't it?
Probably.
He's just a demigod, though, too. I don't know that he's really a full god.
But we can't kill him. He keeps
Well, we
coming
can't
back to
kill him.
life.
Yeah, hey, he's tough. I'll give you that.
Anyway, and the Black Abbot, I mean, he's got a couple of tricks up his sleeves, but I mean, once you get past his puzzles, he's kind of a pushover.
Forgotten about
And
Lady
he's,
Vol. Lady Vol is a good option, but we don't actually really ever fight her, do we? I mean, she's kind of just there.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like you defeat her plan, and she loses interest and goes away. Like she doesn't even kill us in revenge, right? I'm kind of underwhelmed by her attempts to go after us.
Yeah, she just kind of says, "Don't come crying to me when everything goes to shit."
Yeah, and then takes off. And she also mind controls the Black Abbot, so I think that the Black Abbot's gonna have a run for his money here. All right, that was fun. I think I can declare myself the winner safely, especially since no one mentioned that my guy gets mind controlled at the end of the raid.
Oh, that's true.
So we'll go to our next question. This came from Puppies and Rainbow. And we've had this question before, but I think it's a good time to bring it back up. This is what should be in the next monster manual. Drac, would you like to start us off here?
Sure, there's only one correct right answer for this. We have Ravenloft coming. We need vampires in the monster manual. It's an obvious choice.
It's a pretty good choice. I was looking through the monster manual today, and the thing that I kind of landed on was there's not a lot of giants. Which then kind of became, okay, Storm Giant, Cloud Giant, Fire Giant. I think Fire Giants are the most ubiquitous, so I think we need to get Fire Giants in here. They're in a surprising number of places. There's a lot of different named ones you can pull in. I think it's a good choice. Ash, what do you got?
I think those are both good choices. I think they've done a really good job of populating the monster manual over time. I was glad to see Drow finally get in there and dragons get in there. I don't know. I think vampires, really just filling out like you said, the giants and the vampires and the missing undead or devils would be helpful. I don't know. I have to actually log in and see who I can't see HP on right now, because I love to see HP numbers, especially bosses.
Yeah, that's fun. I'm getting close on dragons. I think I'm about 50 dragons away or something like that. I should get to run Fallout Truth more. Get a lot of dragons out of that.
Yeah, it's a good place to get dragons. Don't wyverns count too, or the little dragons that are in the Stormhorns?
Pseudo dragons?
Yeah, pseudo dragons.
Ooh, I'm not sure. I would think. I mean, there are a dragon, but I'm not sure. I'll be honest, I don't really pay that close of attention. It's more of a, ooh, I can see that thing's hit points now. Woohoo! I should probably go look and see how many remnants I have that I haven't collected.
I know. I always forget to do that. I always forget to look at my monster manual to see if I have stuff waiting for me.
I usually do it like once every month or two. I kind of,
It's really,
oh yeah, I should look through it.
It's so fun when you do it. It's like Christmas, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I pulled like 3,000 or 4,000 remnants out of it the other day. It was nice.
I got like 750 remnants just looking through the monster manual this morning, prepping to see, oh, which monsters aren't in here. Kind of went through them all. Yeah, so there you go. There's our debate portion of the show. Hope you enjoyed that. Let's see. We're going to go into game news. There's a little bit of that. We hinted at this. Kind of touched on it briefly. Turn Undead. They've been reading a lot of feedback on Turn Undead, and given the number of players who feel Turn Undead is viable at high levels, it looks like they may opt to dedicate their resources to other things for now. Things could always change, of course, and it's always worth reiterating this whole domain thing is very much in the early stages. I think it's a little sad, to be honest. I think the number of players that are saying that works just fine is kind of overplaying their numbers by a very large margin.
I think that was actually more along the lines of people didn't like the new mechanic. Not that they were okay with the existing mechanic, just they didn't like the proposal. And so I think they're kind of getting confused between people who are talking down the suggestion versus being okay with the way it is.
Well, I think I'm guessing that they can accurately tell that the thing that people are really upset about is losing the destroy part of it, right? So they're probably going to go back to the drawing board and try and balance it out. That's why that was kind of where I focused on that first question of, I think if you put the destroy mechanic back in and lower the DC by a fair margin, and then let Death Domain really to kind of take it back up to the top DC that we were talking about. They're talking about. I think that a lot of that would be assuaged. So.
And this is why we can't have nice things, people.
But yeah, I think it's a better. I hope they implement. I would rather have them implement their proposed turn undead changes with no changes, because I think it's a way better system. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that at all. I get that people really want the destroy part, and I'm okay with having the destroy part as being part of the base thing. I just think you need to balance it, and I don't think that's unreasonable. So, but I think it's a lot better system than what we have now, and I'd rather have what they propose than what we have now. So, hopefully they'll come back to that and change it. And I kind of have the sense that they're not going to add domains until they finish changing turn undead, because I think they're too intertwined how they're using turn undead and adding some bonuses to it. So, especially with the death domain, you got to kind of figure that out. The other thing the big news this week was Artificer changes. So they're proposing changes to the Battle Engineer, or I think it's beyond the proposal stage. They're showing us what it is currently. This is still subject to change, but it's not like going to be major design changes. So this is coming with update 36. So we're going to start with some of the Artificer class changes. So this affects all Artificers. The Rune Arm cooldown was improved by 30%. This is something that is currently in the Battle Engineer tree and was removed. So you just get it for free. That's cool. Rune Arm charge decay while moving was reduced by 50%. That was also in the Battle Engineer tree, and we're getting that for free. Woohoo! There's no longer movement penalty to speed while charging with a Rune Arm. Awesome. Artificers now get Warhammer and Light Hammer proficiencies, and improved critical bludgeoning has been added to the Artificer class feat list. That's kind of fun. Some other choices. Artificer admixture spells now fire straight down if the caster has themselves hard targeted, which is great because it was really hard to shoot yourself with those spells. And Lightning Sphere now has a functional saving throw for both monster and player casters, which will make the run down to Lord of Blades so much nicer. Not that I ever run down there anymore. Rune Arms. Note that none of this really applies to Knives Eternal, Machinations of Madness, or Whirling Words. They were already doing most of it. Rune Arm shots now scale with 100% spell power. Most were scaling between 50 to 80%. The Rune Arm Weapon Imbue now scales with 200% melee or range power, whichever is higher. More damage, woohoo. Homing on Rune Arms now works about the same angles you can shoot a crossbow at and still hit your target, which is roughly 80 degrees. It was previously about 20 degrees for most Rune Arms, meaning be shooting your crossbow and hitting your target, but your Rune Arm shots would just shoot wherever your camera was looking. Long story short, homing should be more reliable. Cannonball shot used by Glass Cannon now uses homing. It also has a much smaller projectile, which fixes a lot of bad behavior. And there you go. So before we get into the tree, what do you guys think of those changes so far?
I like it so far. I think it's a neat add. I kind of like the hammers thing, even though melee artificers are generally at a disadvantage. But that really plays well with the gnome trees, because the gnome trees give you some bonuses to light hammer usage, and even gives you like a crit profile boost to, or I should say, I think it's a threat range boost to light hammers. So that's some nice synergy there with the gnome class, which I think is a fun artificer type of class as well that doesn't get a lot of attention.
More choices, right? So, Drac, anything you want to add here? Is Drac?
Yep, no, I'm here. Sorry, I was AFK for a second. No, I think I like it. I think it's overall it's making it better, and I like how you said they took some of those changes out of the trees, and now that you're getting it for free, and you can do some more builds, which is always good.
Yeah. So, getting into the tree, it's the Battle Engineer tree itself. Core 2 it gets +1 stable charge tier in addition to everything it already does. That removes, or it replaces a similar ability in the tree. Core 4 gets the same thing, also replaces one that used to be in the tree. Core 5, you get plus 15 PRR and MRR in addition to everything it already does. Woohoo! Core 6 gains plus 2 intelligence for a total of plus 4. That brings you in line with pretty much all the other ones. You also get plus 1 competence bonus to crit multiplier with basically all of the Artificer weapons. So crossbows, bastard swords, dwarven axes, light hammers, warhammers, morning stars, and it still does everything else it already did. So, yeah. With all of the lines, they added light hammer. They've added a third line for the weapon training, so you can get it's light hammers, warhammers, and morning stars. You get extra damage and stuff like that. Other changes at tier 1, they moved thaumaturgical conduits down from tier 2. I don't actually remember what that does off the top of my head. They also added an ability that you can get plus 1 to 3 Sunder DCs, which will affect some of the other stuff. They went into Rack Construct, made sure it matches the mechanics version. They moved the extra action boost down, and then what they did was they took the attack or damage boost and made it a multi-selector. So they combined it, moved it there from tier 1. I think the Steel Star said that basically they weren't finding very many people chose both, and you can't use both at the same time anyways. The other thing out of here, and this is a little shockingly powerful in the right circumstances, they added an attack, which is plus 1, 2, or 3 weapon damage for melee, but for a crossbow it's half of that extra damage because repeating crossbows can do a little more. It adds 3d6 acid damage to attack. It also adds 10d6 rust damage, which most things are immune to rust, but constructs are generally not. So that's a lot of damage, considering that you can take this at level 2. Let's see, other stuff. They made sure Disable Construct matches the mechanics version in Tier 3. Tier 4, Endless Fulisade. They tripled the duration from 6 seconds to 18 seconds. It still has the animation leading up to it, but it lasts a lot longer, so it'll be a lot more effective. They also added a Shattered Defenses, which does more damage for your attack. It also procs Improved Sunder DC, or Improved Sunder with a DC of 14 plus your Intelligence modifier plus Sunder bonuses, which you can use with a crossbow. Just think about that for a moment. I think there could be some really fun Harper agent artificers running around going for some DCs here. You can also get Agility Engine, which gives you 3, 6, 10% double strike and double shot while wearing a rune arm, so that's kind of fun. At Tier 5, Reconstructed Armaments, you get a plus 1 competence bonus to critical threat range with your chosen line. Weapon Attachment already saw some changes recently. You get Thundershock Weapon, which does plus 3d6. I think it's an attack. Plus 3d6 electrical damage with scales with spell power. It also procs a trip, which is, and get this, DC 14 plus your intelligence modifier plus your Sunder bonuses, so you can consolidate that a little bit. Requires a crossbow for the range part, for the range attack. You also get Unlock Potential, plus 20 melee and range power while wearing a rune arm, and Tactical Mobility, which gives you 10% faster speed while wielding a rune arm. Some questions that people were asking about that. The status, or this is actually an FAQ. Current status, it's ready to roll out with update 36, but there's still time to make adjustments. Why they added hammers and morning stars? Mostly because artificers and pen and paper don't especially excel with one weapon type or another, but there are a fair few official images with those kind of weapons. They wanted a bludgeoning option, and all of those weapons are somewhat underserved, and some synergy with gnomes and dwarves and the Onatar deity. There was a question of there aren't a lot of good hammers and morning stars out there right now, to which he responded, fair, but there will be more, including, he said, at least one in the next patch, or next update. Let's see, other things in here. There's no changes to Arcano Technician, they just got it passed a little over a year ago. Rune Arm DCs are especially difficult to attain in Epics. Yes, at this point, they have the same DC as a 10th level Artificer spell, more or less, which isn't the easiest to attain. That isn't best fixed in the Battle Engineer tree. The Arcanic Technician has a leg up on attaining those DCs as it should. They've added a few things behind the scenes as part of this pass that will help better improve Rune Arm DCs in the future if needed, and in any case, most Rune Arms will be doing more damage than before regardless of DCs. Also, they didn't mention the poor Iron Defenders. They're still terrible. Steelstar said yes, they are. And working with this pass, they did a lot of meetings, research, and discussions about the Artificer Dog and Druid Wolf pets, and came to the conclusion that a meaningful pass to improve them, not even including AI changes, just statistics and enhancement-based, was going to take twice as long as the Arctic pass above. At minimum, it's something they'd love to do someday as a core part of the classes, just not in the cards for the moment. As far as the third tree, he said, I wish, sorry, not yet. And some other follow-up. There are plenty of good options for good builds that can make use of the tree. They're playing a lot of them internally. True, the defense on the melee side isn't stellar without multi-classing. They're okay with that. The damage output is decent compared to other builds. Someday, hopefully sooner than later, Artificer will have a third tree that they need, and the vast majority of those concerns will be addressed. In the meantime, they're not inclined to inject things that should be in a third tree into one of the existing trees haphazardly. So there you go. So what do you think? I think Artificers are winning myself.
I like how they're starting to do more stuff with hammers, because I really don't see a lot of people use hammers. So maybe this will open up some more builds and we'll see more people using hammers.
Choices are always good. Ash, any more thoughts here?
Yeah, I like what they're doing here. I think it's tough because Artificers have so much utility in their spells and their abilities that you have to be careful with how much DPS you give them. But at the same time, it's nice to see them get some improvements to the Rune Arms, and especially some boost to the melee power and just the ability to do some DPS, because that's been sorely lacking. I think it's a fun class. I don't play it very much, but I think these look interesting.
Yeah. I've always liked the Artificer class. It just always felt a little lackluster compared to some of my other classes. Let's see. They're good for crafting, though.
Yeah, they felt lackluster to me, too.
I mean, if you need to build a crafter and you want to kind of game the system a little bit, make a... Probably the easiest way to do it is make a Blade Forged iconic character and just take all Artificer levels. If you want to spend a heart to get another Artificer level, you can do that too. It'd be really easy to level to 20, and by that point you get the most bonuses you can get for crafting. Because they get like plus 10 to your crafting level, I think. Or it increases your crafting level. At least it did with the old system. And then you can just craft off of that character. So it's not necessary to do that by any means, though. You can it doesn't increase your crafting level past the cap. It just makes crafting a little easier. Let's see. Bonus days for the week. You get plus 10 Treasure Hunters boost through today. That's the quality of loot you pull from a chest, not plus 10 to loot. Store news. There's a question about cosmetic previewing, and unfortunately the external browser doesn't support that, to which they apologize. Hopefully they'll get that fixed soon. Let's see, sales. Adventure and Advanced sale, you get 20% off of select adventure packs, quest XP elixirs. You can get that through June 15th. You can also get a free Ruby of Combustion 30 with the coupon code ONFIRE through June 15th. I think that's the first time they've done an augment as the freebie.
It's the first thing I can think of, or if not, it's been a long time since they have. But I think you're right. It is the first time, which is awesome.
Yeah, expanding the horizons. I'm still waiting for them to give out a free +7 tome. I'm probably going to wait a long time for that.
Yeah, I'm going to say sometimes I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Not with a weekly coupon, no.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah. I don't have to. I play Warforged. Let's see. Community news. 238th Chronicle. Alan Wee is hosting a fashion competition with prizes, so we'll link to that as well. It's a costume competition. You don't have to show up anywhere. It's just taking pictures and posting them on the forums. and he's giving away, I think, 3 Mirrors of Glamoring. So there's already some beautiful screenshots in there too. I would say to a lot of those people, you should also take those costume screenshots and submit them for the screenshot of the week, because some of those are just gorgeous. See, MMO Hopper checked out DDO, so you can check link to their thoughts. See, the High Lords of Malkir hosted Heroic and Legendary Hound of Zoriat teaching raids yesterday. The Munchkin Summer Games are going on Kyber. The guild for the week. The Wee Free Men are a small Kyber-based level 107 guild looking for other pen and paper players. I kind of wonder if you have to be a gnome or a halfling to get into that guild. I'm not really sure. But, let's see, the comment for the week. Would cold resistance negate the beneficial impact of air conditioning? No, because air conditioning doesn't do damage. It's a comfort thing. Although, if you could get someone who could make air-conditioned full plate, I'm sure my dwarf would love that. And probably all the other people around him as well. Let's see, other stuff going on. We got a shout-out for talking about Quivers and Rune Arms in our last show. We were off by 1 show. It would have been so perfectly aligned if we were talking about all the Artificer changes this week on that show. Oh, well. DDO Players News sent out the Drac signal. Do you want to talk about your show last week?
Yeah, it was quite the interesting show last week. Normally, Pineleaf is the host of the show. I had some things going on, so I had to record the show later. So I had Lessa and Mithri from the Damsels on, and we ended up talking about these changes, and I kind of was a little vocal on my opinions of the forums. So if you haven't listened to the show, I'll warn you now. But luckily, nobody complained to me, which I thought I was going to. I apologize if I did upset anybody. I was coming from a good place.
Don't worry, I'll send you a complaint when we're done with the show.
I'm surprised I didn't get any complaints. Everything I got was positive, and everybody agreed with me. So I was really shocked. I love this community. I really do. I just want to put that out there. I was coming from a good place, people.
The Damsels of DDO returned to the harbor for a challenge. I kind of crashed their live stream and played with them for a while and told them a little bit.
Talked about that.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. It was a good one. Lessa was apparently a little disappointed that I outed myself.
Yeah.
But part of the reason I did that was because I kind of wanted to actually play with them as me. But I had a lot of fun. Let's see, Full Moon Fury has the worst sorcerer ever. Even though Ren's Tower of Despair, Bard Life continued as well, and Pineleaf plays his Dragonborn. Let's see, if you're going to Gen Con, you can not only meet Draculetta, but there is an unofficial player meetup gathering for buffs. So you can find out about that. I believe Cordovan will be there, and I believe Cordovan is bringing swag with him as well. He usually does. So.
Yeah, that's what he said. So it's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
And that's Friday night of Gen Con. And you don't have to have a Gen Con badge or tickets for it or anything. It's like an unofficial, it's not an official sanctioned Gen Con event. So even if you were not going to Gen Con, but you're close enough you can drive to Indy for the night, you should come and hang out. It's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. There was a video about Artificer changes with Steel Star. So if you want to get, I mean, they kind of go through everything that's there like we did, but you can kind of get Steel Star, more of Steel Star's, kind of where he was coming from and why some of these things were in there, and kind of the nuts and bolts of some of the stuff going on there. Let's see. There's a DDOCast Splat. We're tentatively planning to come back on the 20th of June. That may have to change, just because of my ever-changing and complicated and busy schedule during this time of year. Other gaming news, we'll link to the forum post about gathering for buffs for Gen Con. I also wanted to give a shout-out to Kickstarter. I don't normally... This is kind of more DDO Players news, kind of ballpark here. But I wanted to give a shout out to the Lost Age RPG on Kickstarter. It's an RPG, tactical RPG, mythic based. So it's it'd be fairly comparable to most RPGs you're playing with, but they got some beautiful artwork and kind of monsters. A lot of fun stuff. They're trying to raise $5,000. The reason why I'm bringing this up is this is kind of a fun little tie-in for. It actually has to do with DDO, sort of, and DDOcast. The guy who is leading this Kickstarter and this project is actually not only the guy who was my first ever dungeon master and helped get me into playing D&D, but he's also the guy that got me into DDO. So I'll give him a little quick shout out here. So if you'd like to support that campaign, you can do that. It's a pretty reasonable price. I think it was like for $10 you can get the for $10 you can participate in the Kickstarter and you get a digital copy of the book. So that they're trying to put out.
Which is not bad for a PDF on a Kickstarter. $10 is a great price.
Yeah.
Usually they're at least 20 to get a PDF. So yeah, so that is amazing that you can get it for $10.
Yep. With that, we'll get into lightning post here. And there was a fair bit of comments. Kind of part of the problem I'm going to have here with the lightning post is I'm going to try and consolidate one conversation that was kind of going on, mostly between Francis Wright and myself on YouTube. Basically, and hopefully I can do a fair job of summarizing. Francis does not like that they're taking out the destroy aspect of Turn Undead. And feels he's pretty passionate about that staying in and considers that a nerf. Again, it's not unreasonable, and I can see why you'd want to keep that in there. He also was concerned about the stun, and this is kind of when I started thinking about. They said a 10-second stun, which is less than it is currently, which was his problem with it. There's definitely a question here, right? Like, is the stun going to be helpless, or is it just they don't do anything? I mean, if you're getting extra damage, 10 seconds is more meaningful than what it currently is. So we'll see how that goes. He also wrote that the fear effect of Turn Undead and Pen and Paper will translate very, very badly to DDO. I think if it doesn't have fear effect anymore, it used to. Because I remember in Zorian Cypher, people would try and turn the specters, and they'd run away, and you'd have to wait for them to come back. I think they may have taken the fear effect out, though. But yeah, I agree. A fear-based effect in Turn Undead would not be a great addition or change. Let's just take that out if it's there as well. But yeah, if you want a good snapshot of why people don't like the change, I think his comments on our YouTube were very applicable and a good cross section of that. Dull Thud wrote in that the Dynamistic Quivers also have a hidden double strike feature in addition to the double shot. You get 5% at Heroic and 8% at Epic. That's pretty slick. I didn't know that. 8% double strike on a quiver sounds like something that I would like on more of my characters. It will show up on the character sheet when equipped, but doesn't usually stack with other double strike items, which would be pretty typical. Amberstein wrote in, said one thing they didn't hear us touch on was the fact that not all rune arms are craftable, and no rune arms over level 19 are craftable. I mean, it's pretty much that the level 19 rune arm will be the best in the slot for a fairly large level range before the improved effects will start to be better than the effects on level 19, plus the effects you can craft on them. Mostly because the effects are better than those on many old named items. So few of the rune arms which were released after the I think the new random loot are exceptions to that general rule. He said that the reasons why St. Murray's fire is electric, he always assumed that it was because it was based on St. Elmo's fire, which is an electrical effect in the real world. I mean, that's better than anything I got. I just think it's funny that it says St. Murray's fire and it's electrical damage. Let's see. He said that we asked if Turn Undead can destroy Undead. You said that you would have to be way over level for that to happen, which is correct, but ignores the mighty turning enhancement that all clerics who want to Turn Undead take. That's a very good throw in there. Thank you. It's a tier 2 ability in the Radiant Servant tree that covers turn result or converts a turn result into a destroy result. And I think it's fair to say that we kind of weren't really doing much talking or considering that very much. But, mighty turning is how clerics make turn undead work in heroics. It really does not work in epics. The reports you've seen about people landing turn undead and riding the storm out are a fully maxed out turn undead build on the normal level in a raid where there are no champions with Death Ward who ignore mighty turning. But Standing Stone Games has said that they are abandoning changes because very few people told them it was working just fine across 6 days after the sneak peek, balanced against years of people telling them it was broken. Seems to be sketchy reasoning, so he's going to guess that there's some other reasoning driving that decision. He also said 800 hit points is trivial. Look at the entire benefit of the domain. It's clear that it might be taken by a new cleric who's undergeared. For the exact reasons, a lot of new undergeared characters will run an unyielding sentinel, but abandon it for a better DPS tree as soon as they get their gear to a decent level. I don't think that 800 hit points is very trivial, personally. But
Me neither. If you don't need the 800 hit points, go ahead and give them to me. I'll be happy to take them for you.
yeah, right?
Exactly.
But I think, yeah, there are other compelling things that you could take instead. So I don't know that everyone will take that, but there are certainly some that, yeah, if you are hit point challenged, I could definitely see people taking that. That seems very reasonable. So, let's see. Our survey question for the week comes from G on Kenneth. What do you do once you hit level 30? I think there's kind of two popular answers here. One is you reincarnate, or two, you do some raiding and look and farm some loot. It's kind of the two options, I think. You have anything you want to add to that?
No, that's really the only two things I can think of that you would do.
Yeah, or help your friends. I mean, that's another thing you can do. Work on something else. You could work on a different character.
Yeah, I could say work on an alt. I guess that would be one of the options you could choose too.
Yeah. All right, then, let's close out the show here. Do you want to plug Players News a little bit?
Sure. The website is DDOplayers.com, and we record our podcast on Monday nights at 8:30. You can get to that if you go to DDOplayers.com/live. And if you're not familiar with the site and our podcast, we're a little bit different. We started out as just talking about DDO, and we still talk about DDO. We still love DDO, but we've kind of morphed into a tabletop and board gaming website and podcast as well. So how the podcast works is usually about the first 20 to 25 minutes of the show, give or take, is all DDO talk, and then after that, we will talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, other role-playing, and other tabletop gaming. So we're kind of an all-purpose website now, and it seems to work out well. I was kind of hesitant about doing it, and I slowly kind of started, just adding more stuff week by week, and everybody seemed to take it. And it's worked out pretty well for us so far. And we also do a lot of interviews with developers for board games and stuff. So if you like to hear about the inside working of the game industry, not just video games, but like tabletop games, check us out. As I said, the website's DDOplayers.com, and the podcast records Monday night live at 8:30, and we release it on Wednesday morning, and that's on the website and YouTube.
It's a fun perspective as well. If you want a little bit different perspective about DDO than you generally find on this show.
Yeah, we are.
That's a show for you.
We are fairly new, both Pine Leaf and I. I actually played right after free to play. I played for about a year, and then all of my friends I played with kind of quit playing, and I kind of drifted away, and then I came back about maybe 3 years ago. So I'm coming from a newer player, heroic player aspect, and a lot of people like that because we kind of have different eyes for a lot of stuff than what everybody, that's played for 10 years will have. So,
Indeed. So thanks for joining me, Draculetta, and thanks to Asheras as well. Thanks to everyone else for listening to the show, especially the folks in the chat room chiming in today. And thanks to all the other contributors for DDOcast and to Standing Stone Games and Wizards of the Coast for making DDO happen. And thanks to Cyberbeers for hosting the podcast. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOcast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can also hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be part of the show, or if you have a comment on this episode, maybe a question you'd like to hear us answer, or a topic you'd like to hear us debate, or if you just want to say hi, you can leave us a comment, or you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates. Our closing tip for the week comes from Gore-Tech on Kenneth. Strafe and keep your weapon pointed at your target. An excellent battle strategy. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your tests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.